Здравствуйте. Hello and welcome to Russian language class. Before moving on, let's have a quick recap of the topics that we learned in the previous lesson. If you remember correctly, in the previous lesson we discussed about the comparative degree of adjectives and adverbs, and we have discussed that comparative degree of adjectives and adverbs are derived only from the qualitative adjectives or adverbs. We have also discussed in detail how do we form the comparative degree from an adjective or an adverb. So, for the revision I have written a couple of sentences and will discuss one by one. Этот дом красивее, чем тот дом. So, how do we use the comparative degree of an adjective or an adverb? We can use it in two ways. The first is when we use the nominative case of the noun with which something is compared, like here along with the word чем. Чем is preceded by the nominative case of the noun with which something is compared and a comma is placed before чем. So, этот дом красивее, чем тот дом. This house is more beautiful than that house. The same sentence can be written in a different way, like here I have written этот дом красивее того дома. So, as you can see here, we have not used the word чем, we have used the genitive singular of the noun which we have used here in the nominative case. So, tavo doma is the genitive case form of tot dom. So, by using the genitive case of noun with which something is compared, we can also use the comparative degree of an adverb or an adjective. The other example I have written here again with the genitive case of the noun, этот город старше того города. This city is older than that city. So, here again I have used the genitive case of the noun with which this noun is being compared. So, this is about the use of the comparative degree. The other topic we had discussed in the previous lesson was the collective numerals. We have discussed that how do we define the collective numerals, what do they define, what do they denote, and how do we use the collective numerals in a sentence. So, here I have written a sentence, an example, в парке играют трое мальчиков. So, here трое is the collective numeral which is derived from the cardinal number 3, and I have told you that with the collective numerals only masculine nouns can be used, masculine animate nouns, that too in the form of genitive plural. So, here as you can see malchik is being used in the genitive plural form malchikov with the collective numeral troye. We have discussed other collective numerals also, for example dvoye, troye, chetvera, pyachera and others, and apart from the numbers collective numerals derived from the cardinal numbers, we have also discussed the collective numeral oba, oba which is used with masculine nouns and obe which is used with feminine nouns. So, this is about the topics that we learned in the previous lesson. Let us move on to the topics that we will be learning in this lesson. In the previous lessons so far, we have discussed 5 cases in Russian: nominative, genitive, prepositional, accusative, dative, and now we will be discussing the 6th and the final case, which is called the instrumental case. So, today we will talk about its uses. So, how do we use the instrumental case of nouns in Russian? So, the first use I have written here is without preposition. So, instrumental case of nouns can be used without preposition, and as the name suggests, how do you define the instrumental case? Something that denotes the instrument of action. Primary use of the instrumental case of nouns is to denote the instrument of action, and especially when it is used without the preposition. For example, студенты пишут карандашом или ручкой. The students write with a pencil or a pen. So, Karandash, as you can see, has become Karandashum, which is the instrumental case form of the noun Karandash, and Ruchka has become Ruchkai. So, these two forms correspond to the instrumental case form of the nouns Karandash and Ruchkai. So, as you can see, Karandash and Ruchka, they denote the instruments of action, which is to write. So, how do you write? You write with a pencil or a pen. So, these two are instruments, that is why we have kept them in the instrumental case form. The next example I have written here is Обычно едят ложкой или вилкой. Idiat is from the verb to have or to eat. Usually one eats with a spoon or a fork. So, spoon and fork, they are again the instruments of action, which is to eat. So, how do you eat? Either with a spoon or with a fork or both. So, that is why these two nouns have been kept in the form of instrumental case. So, the first and the primary use of instrumental case is to denote the instruments of action. Apart from denoting the instruments of action, instrumental case of nouns is also used after the verbs stach or stanovitsa, which is the imperfective form of the verb stach, and быть. So, stanovitsa, stach, and after the verb быть, especially when we talk about someone's profession, we use the instrumental case of nouns. For example, Moj drug станет инженером. Moj drug станет инженером. My friend will become an engineer. So, here we are talking about the profession of the probable profession of the friend. So, that is why we have used the instrumental case form of the noun engineer. The next example is Moj djedushka byl kosmonautom. Moj djedushka byl kosmonautom. I have told you that after the verb быть, we are supposed to use the instrumental case of nouns. So, kosmonaut, that means astronaut. So, my grandfather was an astronaut. So, here as we can see, after the verb быть, we use the instrumental case of nouns. So, these two uses of instrumental case we are supposed to use when we are using the instrumental case without preposition. So, we will move on to the next use, which is with the preposition sa. Sa is a preposition which means with. As I already told you that the instrumental case of nouns are also used with prepositions. For now, we will only focus on the preposition sa or s, which means with, and when we use a noun after this preposition, it denotes the person with which something is or some action is performed. For example, there are certain verbs with which we use skim. Sa is with and came is the instrumental case form of kto, with whom. So, Gulyat skim, Gulyat is to take a walk or to walk with whom. Chitach skim, to read with whom. Pech, which is to sing, with whom. Tansivach is to dance, again with whom. Rabotach, to work, with whom. Gavarit, Gavarit, to speak, with whom, and Rasgavarivach, to talk. So, all these verbs can take the instrumental case of the nouns with the preposition sa or s. For example, мы поем с бабушкой. Мы поем с бабушкой. Поем is from the verb петь, which is to sing. So, we are singing with the grandmother. So, babushka has become babushkai in the instrumental case, and it has been used with the preposition sa, which means with. So, we are singing with our grandmother. The next example I have written here is On razgavarivayat s drugam. On razgavarivayat s drugam. He is talking to his friend. So, Druk in the instrumental case has become Drugam. So, he is talking to his friend. So, this is the second use of the instrumental case of nouns. There are other uses also that we will discuss in the next part. Instrumental case of nouns are also used with the reflexive verbs with non-reflexive meaning, which means which are translated in English with the non-reflexive meaning. For example, we have already learned this verb Strichata, Strechitsa, Strichata, Strechitsa, which means to meet. To meet has the meaning which is non-reflexive. So, with this verb we are supposed to use the instrumental case of noun with the preposition s. For example, my vstrechilis spivitsei. My vstrechilis spivitsei. We met the singer. Pivitsa is singer. So, as you can see, if we use the reflexive verb vstrechitsa, we are supposed to use the instrumental case of the noun pivitsa with the preposition s or s. But when we use the non-reflexive verb which is vstrechit, then we are using the accusative case of the noun pivitsa, which becomes pivitsu. My vstrechili pivitsu. As you can see, the meaning remains the same. We met the singer, we met the singer, but the form of the nouns are different. Why? Because of the verbs. If we are using the reflexive verb, we are using the instrumental case of the noun, and if we are using non-reflexive verb, we are using the accusative case of the noun. The next verb is zdarovatsa, pazdarovatsa, is to greet or to wish someone. Again, you can see it has the non-reflexive meaning in English. So, we will use the instrumental case of the noun with the preposition s. Studyanti pazdarovalis spripada vachilim. Studyanti pazdarovalis spripada vachilim. The students greeted the teacher. So, here we are using the instrumental case of the noun pripada vachil with the preposition. And these two sentences, these two nouns, they answer the question skim, with whom. Here also skim, which means with whom. So, there are other verbs also that we will discuss in the next part. The other reflexive verbs with which we are supposed to use the instrumental case of nouns with the preposition s are znakomitsa, paznakomitsa, which means to get acquainted with someone. Znakomitsa is the nesavrishini or imperfective aspect of the verb, and paznakomitsa is the perfective aspect. For example, mi paznakomilis sasiedam. Mi paznakomilis sasiedam. We got acquainted with the neighbor. So, here sasiet has been used in the instrumental case with the preposition s. The next set of verb is savyetavatsa and pasavyetavatsa. Savyetavatsa is to take advice. Pasavyetavatsa is the perfective aspect and savyetavatsa is imperfective aspect. If you remember, while discussing the dative case, we have discussed this verb also, but non-reflexive counterpart of this verb. So, if you use savyetavach, which is the non-reflexive verb, we answer the question kamu, and kamu requires the noun in the dative case, but here we are using the reflexive verb. So, we will use the instrumental case of the noun with the preposition s. Nam nushna savyetavatsa svrachom. Nam nushna savyetavatsa svrachom. So, we must take advice from the doctor. So, here the meaning remains the same, but the form of the noun changes. The next pair of verb is vijitsa, увидеться. Видеться, увидеться, to see each other. And if you remember the verb, which is the non-reflexive counterpart of видеться, is видеть and увидеть. When we use видеть, увидеть, we use the accusative case of the noun, but here we are using the reflexive verb. So, we will use the instrumental case of the noun or pronoun along with the preposition s. So, my davno ni vidjelis swami. So, it has been long we have not met you. So, here as you can see we are using the instrumental case of the pronoun we. So, these were the verbs, reflexive verbs with which we use the instrumental case of the nouns along with the preposition sir. And apart from the preposition sir or s, we use the instrumental case of nouns with other prepositions as well. For example, the preposition nad, which means above. So, after nad we will use the instrumental case of nouns. Pad is below. So, nad is above, pad is below. After pad also we will use the instrumental case. The next one is meshtu. Meshtu is between. Meshtu also takes the instrumental case of nouns. Perit, perit is in front of, it also takes the instrumental case of nouns, and za, za is behind. So, these are some of the prepositions which take the instrumental case of nouns. So, these were some of the uses of the instrumental case, and the interrogative words that the instrumental case of nouns answer are kiem without preposition, chiem which is inanimate noun. So, when the question is chiem, then we are required to use inanimate nouns. With preposition skiem or with whom, chiem, again chiem requires inanimate nouns. So, with what? So, these are the interrogative words that the instrumental case of nouns answer. So, this is all about the introduction of the instrumental case. So, now we will move on to our next topic.